Welcome back to Teachable Moments with April podcast. I am your host, April. Inspire, host, create, explore endless new possibilities, next level broadcasting. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Kyleigh's cancer care as an infant wasn't the only time I needed courage. After I diagnosed Kyleigh with diabetes in the school bathroom, Kyleigh and I wiped the tears from our face in the school bathroom, grabbed her school bags, and dashed to the car. The car ride to the hospital started as eerily quiet as it could. Both of us were lost in our own thoughts. After softly sniffling, Kyleigh was the one who broke the silence and said, "Mom, I have two things that I want to make sure happen at the hospital." "Okay, what's that, sweetheart?" I replied. "First, if they have anything to tell us, I want them to tell you first, and you can tell me." I quickly replied, "Kyleigh, they're not going to tell you anything we don't already know. The only surprise they could say is that you don't have diabetes, which would mean your mom is a moron. I'm pretty sure I'm not a moron, so nothing's going to be a surprise. What's the second thing?" Kyleigh said, I don't want anyone rushing." I was puzzled. "What do you mean rushing? I don't understand why you don't want anyone rushing, sweetie." "Mom," as she sniffled, "every time that I've seen doctors on TV rush to take care of a patient, the patient dies. I don't want to die. Please, no rushing." Kyleigh had grown up around medicine. She came to the clinic with me on countless occasions. She accompanied me on patient rounds on the inpatient ward. She walked around the hospital with me and probably even knew her way around without assistance from me. As familiar as she was with medical stuff, this was not her profession. The words she said in that moment made me realize how terrified my baby was of the unknown. I knew what was going to happen, so I could anticipate the next steps. I didn't want to be taking the next step, but I wasn't scared of it exactly. But Kyleigh had no idea what to expect. To her, it was like taking a step into the dark. Being brave is easier when you can anticipate what is coming. But it is much harder to gather courage when you are faced with the unknown. I spent the rest of the car ride explaining what was going to happen. I tried my best to relieve the tension and add some humor to get Kyleigh laughing again. When we got to the ER, it did not take long to get us checked in and back to an exam room. The medical student came in first and spoke to Kyleigh and I to gather Kyleigh's medical history and perform, an initial exam. I laughed later with Kyleigh because he told her how he was going to interview for an internship. When Kyleigh told him that I was in charge of the transitional internship, he became nervous, and we never saw him again. The ER attending physician came in and repeated the history and physical the student had obtained. He asked what kind of medicine I practiced, and I told him pediatric allergy and immunology. He then explained that yes, Kyleigh's blood sugar was very high, but he wanted to get a chest x-ray to make sure it wasn't pneumonia. Pneumonia? What was he thinking? She didn't have a cough. She didn't have a fever. I needed to advocate for my child. She needed fluids and eventually insulin, but a chest x-ray was not necessary. Sir, I don't think a chest x-ray is necessary. Don't you think she has diabetes? I politely asked to steer him away from the chest x-ray. Pneumonia can cause electrolyte shifts, so I think it's important that we rule that out first. Let me be the doctor, he replied. I told myself to be brave and kept waiting. My brain was on overdrive, providing me with thought after thought about every possible catastrophic thing that could be happening in the operating room. I once again needed my resilient suit of armor. Attempting to quiet my mind, I ate, believe it or not, pistachios. Staying focused on cracking pistachios kept my hands busy and slowed the thoughts swirling in my mind. Many hours later, Kyleigh had finally arrived in the PICU late in the afternoon, and she was struggling. I was filled with so many emotions. Exhaustion from hours of worry, relief that she was finally done with surgery, and the helplessness from seeing her uncomfortable. Her small body was hooked to every possible tube and monitor, and she had an epidural in place to help with the pain. Her breathing tube was removed in the operating room, and she was now working so very hard to breathe. The cold symptoms from the previous night, along with the lengthy surgery, resulted in a tremendous amount of airway irritation that forced Kyleigh to work for each breath. The tumor was in a trickier position than originally anticipated, and the lymph nodes along her aorta that were thought to be involved had to be left in place. She had received a transfusion due to the blood loss, but the surgery, thank God, was a success. Kyleigh had no central line in place, though. That night was challenging due to Kyleigh's discomfort, but the following day proved to be more of a challenge. Kyleigh's team of doctors came in the following morning and further discussed the surgery. The presumably involved lymph nodes changed the stage of her diagnosis. She was now officially stage 3 cancer. This meant the tumor was more serious and had grown, and it had spread. This meant chemotherapy and back to the operating room for a central line. My efforts for advocacy, they failed. I was left feeling so angry and unheard. I felt guilty because I knew my attempts to get a central line placed at the time of surgery wasn't for my convenience. It was for my daughter's health. Failing when someone is depending on you, it's a terrible feeling. I had failed my daughter. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for listening to Teachable Moments with April. If you did enjoy this episode, I invite you to come right back to check out my podcast and my other episodes. Don't forget to listen, add us to your favorites, and support by clicking on the link in the description. As always, be blessed and be well. Until next time.